Holiday season is coming and I need some festive knitwear to wear to dinners with friends and family. Let's knit a festive Fair Isle Spencer. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Bas and in this video I'm going to show you how I knit a festive Fair Isle Spencer for the holidays. I'm going to knit it on this knitting machine. This is my Brother electronic knitting machine. It is a metal flatbed knitting machine with a ribber. It has a needle spacing of 4.5 millimeters and it knits beautiful fabrics. I have one of the electronic versions of the Brother knitting machines and it has a lot of built-in stitch patterns to make knitting beautiful garments really quick and easy. How to knit a Spencer? You can get a pattern from knitting machine magazines. These are old magazines. This is a Brother magazine with a Spencer pattern. This is a Pass-Up magazine 29 with a Spencer pattern. You can take an old Spencer that you measure. I have knitted many Spencers before in different shapes and sizes. You can also get knitting patterns from yarn websites. There is software that generates knitting patterns. There are many options to get a Spencer pattern. Now, I have knitted several Spencers before. I kind of know what I want. So I'm going to knit a Spencer like this. Sloped shoulders, straight body with ribbing. Also ribbing along the armholes and around the neck. Same for the front of the Spencer, but with a V cutout for the neck. So this is how I knit a Spencer. I know that the width that I want for my Spencer is 54 centimeters wide. Same on the front. I want my total length to be 70 centimeters. I want the depth of my arms to be 29 centimeters. I want my back width to be 37 centimeters. And I want my neck to be 19 centimeters in width and 24 centimeters deep. So this is based on my personal preference. You can use a standard pattern, you can do whatever you want. Now I have chosen the yarn I want to knit with, and it's these three colors, blue, white and red. It consists of 75% wool and 25% polyamide, and it's considered over here a standard sock weight yarn, which means that about 100 grams is 420 meters of yarn. Now, I have an electronic Brother machine and it comes with all pre-programmed stitch patterns for lace, for tuck stitch and also for color work or Fair Isle. And I have chosen stitch 75, motif 75, and I have knitted a test swatch in the colors of yarn that I'm going to use. And I've knitted a test swatch in different stitch sizes, stitch size 6, stitch size 7. I have treated this swatch the way I'm also going to treat my Spencer when it's finished. So I did it on a gentle wool wash cycle in my washing machine. And then I blocked it on blocking mats and I let it dry completely because that's also what I'm going to do to my finished garment. So this ensures the sizing of my swatch corresponds to the sizing of my actual finished garment. And I have decided on stitch size 6 and I have measured the amount of rows and the amount of stitches. And on a square of 10 by 10 centimeters, I get 32 stitches and 38 rows. And this is my gauge. So this is the key to calculate the entire Spencer. Because when you know how many stitches or rows there are on every 10 centimeters, you can calculate the stitches and rows you need to knit your garment. Let's get behind the machine. First, I'm going to knit the back of the Spencer. I have calculated my pattern and I'm going to start with the back of the Spencer. I'm going to cast on 172 stitches, knit 20 rows of rib, then knit 125 rows in pattern, and my pattern is 8 rows in red, 2 rows in blue, 2 rows in white, 2 rows in blue, decreasing 10 stitches for the armholes, decreasing 1 time 1 stitch, knit 1 row, decreasing 15 times 1 stitch and knit 2 rows, decreasing 1 time 1 stitch and knit 66 rows, and then I'm at row 224 and I start the shoulder shaping. And I'm going to decrease 1 time 4 stitches and knit 2 rows, and I'm going to decrease 5 times 5 stitches and knit 2 rows. And then I'm left with 60 stitches. So first I'm going to cast on 172 stitches and I'm going to knit a 1 by 1 needle rib. So 86 stitches to the left side of 0 and 86 stitches to the right side of 0. I have my ribber at full pitch. I'm going to push my ribber up. We are going to attach the ribber carriage to the ribber bed, main bed carriage, and connect them with the connecting part. Now the ribber and the main carriage are connected. We are going to set the ribber on tightness tension 2 and on yarn tension 0. Levers are up, knobs are down. Main carriage tension 0. Nothing is pressed, just normal knitting, plain normal knitting. I'm pushing the carriages all the way to the left because now we're going to start the cast on. I'm going to cast on 172 needles, 86 needles to the right side of 0 and 86 needles to the left side of 0. I'm taking my 1 by 1 selection ruler and I'm going to select 86 needles to the right on the main bed. And let me see, that will probably be 85, yes, 85 needles to the left. So on the ribber it's 85 needles on the right side and 86 needles to the left. Now I'm taking my carriages across to align the needles. All needles are aligned. I'm going to thread my carriages with the yarn. So I'm dropping it in between the beds and I'm going to thread the yarn into this connector behind this metal part. Like so. Yarn is threaded. Now I'm going to knit my first zigzag row. I'm holding the yarn with my left hand. You can also hang a clothespin, a lot of people do that. And I'm knitting my first zigzag row to cast on. Zigzag row knitted. Now I'm taking my cast on comb, removing the metal wire, pushing the cast on comb in between the beds and replacing the metal wire in the cast on comb. Now I'm going to hang some weights on the cast on comb and I'm going to knit 1 circular round for the cast on, which equals to 2 circular rows. I'm going to increase my tension to 1. I'm going to press the left part button. So the main carriage knits to the right but does not knit to the left, increasing the stitch size to 1. I'm leaving it on tightness 2 and I'm going to press the right part button. So main carriage knits to the right, ribber carriage knits to the left. So I'm going to make a circular row. One circular row knitted, main carriage on tension 2, release the part button, ribber carriage on tension 2, tightness to 1, release the part button, and now knit the final zigzag to finish the cast on. Reset the row counter and knit 20 rows of rib on tension 2. And my final row of ribbing I'm going to knit at a higher tension, tension 5, same on the ribber. Okay, now my ribbing is done. I'm going to have to transfer all the stitches from the ribber bed to the main bed. And I am very fortunate, I have a transfer carriage. So I'm going to remove the carriages from the beds. I'm going to select all main bed needles and 2 extra on the right. I'm going to set my ribber to half pitch, placing my transfer carriage onto the needle beds, gripping it firmly, lever is down, and in one confident swoop I'm going to transfer all the needles. Now taking all the ribber needles out of work, lowering the ribber and checking that all my stitches have transferred, and this stitch didn't transfer, so I'm transferring it by hand, putting the two first needles back out of work again, checking that my rib is knitted correctly. Now I'm going to knit straight up for 125 rows, and I'm going to knit in pattern. So I have to pay attention to when I switch out the colors. Now I'm going to place my main carriage on the main bed, and because I'm working with the 4 color changer, I'm going to screw on the color changer sinker plate. I'm going to thread the sinker plate with my main yarn into here. I'm going to set this knob on KC1. I'm going to press the multicolor button. I'm checking that my carriage is set to normal knitting, and I'm going to set my stitch size to the size for the main knitting, in this case 6. I'm installing the single bed color changer, and I can just easily click it on, like so. I'm also adding the extension arm. Now I'm going to thread my yarn, and I'm using 3 colors for this pattern. And I made it a habit to reserve the most right slot for the main yarn, which I'm not going to thread. Then I'm going to thread in number 2 the second yarn, and in number 3 the third yarn. And in this case I'm starting with white in number 3. I'm pressing number 3, number 2 for the red yarn, and that's it, all set up. I switch on my computer. I'm going to start with selector button 1, and I'm confirming with step. Now it's asking me for the pattern number, and I'm going to knit pattern number 75. Confirm with step. It's telling me it is centered. Fine. Confirm with step. It's telling me it has 16 stitches repeat. Fine. Confirm with step. And the ready light is on. I'm going to bring forward all the needles, and I'm going to knit the selection row. All needles for the first row are selected. I'm going to set my row counter to 0, and I'm going to start with red. So I'm pushing my red yarn. So now the sinker plate will catch the red yarn. And now I start knitting 125 rows in color, changing every time the color needs to be changed. Now hanging some edge weights on the sides to help the edge stitches knit off more easily. To avoid having to cut all the yarn when I'm changing colors, I'm going to guide the yarn up, and every 4 rows I'm going to hook the inactive color yarn onto the last needle, so it will be knitted into the edge. Okay, row 125. Now I'm going to decrease 10 stitches on the right, carriage across, decrease 10 stitches on the left, and then continue decreasing for the armhole shaping up until row 224. Decreasing 10 stitches on the right. So I'm going to push the needles back in normal working position. 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 10 and this is needle 11. So 11 needles, I'm going to decrease 10 and I'm going to finish on the 11th needle. And because I have two strands of yarn here, blue and white, and I don't want to cut the yarn for this decreasing, I'm going to decrease with both strands, pretending it to be one. You can also decrease alternating, one white, one blue, one white, one blue, but the yarn isn't that thick, so I'm just going to use both at the same time. Ten stitches decreased. I'm rehanging my edge weight. Both yarns are on the end needle. I've pulled it forward again as it was, and now I can continue knitting to the left. Now decreasing 10 stitches on the left side. 2, 6, 8, 10, and this is needle number 11. On this side I have 3 strands of yarn. I can decrease with one strand of yarn, cut the others, reattach them later. I can decrease with one strand of yarn and have long floats on the other colors, or I can decrease with all these colors at the same time, and for ease of use I'm going to do that. So now I need to decrease one stitch on the right, one stitch on the left, and I'm going to decrease with my 2-prong tool, pushing the needles in, moving them one over, placing them in knitting position 2. Row 224. Now I'm going to decrease one time 4 stitches for 2 rows, and I decrease 5 times 5 stitches and knit 2 rows, and I'm going to do it on both sides. Okay, row 236 and I'm done. So I have 30 needles to the left and 30 needles to the right are still on my knitting machine. I'm going to mark the outer needles so I know how to assemble the sweater later, and I'm just going to cast off all these needles. I am marking the outer needles just with a contrast color yarn, in this case red, and I'm going to cast off all the remaining needles behind the gate pegs. Now cut the thread and remove the knitting from the machine. And here is the knitted back of the spencer. Okay, the back of the spencer is finished. Now I'm going to knit the front of the spencer. And I'm going to start with 172 stitches and knit a 1x1 rib for 20 rows. Then knit in pattern up until row 125. Start decreasing for the armholes, and then at row 144 I'm also going to start decreasing for the neckline. So up until row 144 it's all the same as for the back of the Spencer, so I'll go over it pretty quickly and I'll see you when I get at the neckline. Okay, so now I'm at row 144 and I start the shaping for the neckline. And from here on I need to pay attention to making the decreases for the armhole. I need to pay attention to making the decreases for the neckline. And I need to pay attention to when I need to change the colors. So that's a lot to pay attention to. Now I can do several things. I can put half of my knitting in holding position and knit one shoulder at a time. Or I can knit half of my knitting off on waste yarn and continue with one shoulder at a time. Or I can just knit the entire garment off on waste yarn where I am now and then rehang one shoulder at a time and knit one shoulder at a time. And I'm going to do the last, because there's no shame in playing it safe. I need to pay attention to a lot of decreases, a lot of color changes, and if I make a mistake, I can always go back to this point. Now I must really pay attention to how many needles are on my machine now and where my patterning is in my computer. Because when I'm going to rehang my knitting on the machine, I also want to reset my patterning to the point where I am now. So the pattern continues. Okay, so remember I'm at row 144. And in my case, my stitch line is on row number 9 for the next row. So when I rehang my knitting on the machine, I must make sure that I continue from row number 9. My left needle is needle number 67. My right needle is needle number 67. So remember that when I'm rehanging my knitting onto the machine. Now I have some really green contrasting yarn left over from another project. So I'm going to thread my color changer slot number 4 with my waste yarn and I'm going to knit it off on waste yarn. Okay, knitted about 10 rows of waste yarn. Now release the knitting from the machine. Okay, my knitting is from the machine and I have knitted it off on waste yarn. So this means that whatever happens after this, I can always come back to this point and rehang it onto the machine. Now I'm going to rehang the left shoulder on the leftmost needles. Now my left shoulder is back on the knitting machine. And now I'm going to set my computer again so it will start knitting from row number 9. So I turn on my computer and I use the arrow keys to go back to row number 9. On this knitting machine I need to make a selection row first and I want to start with my carriage on the left. So I want to make a selection row from right to left. So first I'm going to pass my carriage on normal knitting with both part buttons pressed, so it will not knit. So going to the right, nothing happens. Now I engage my KC knob and I go to the left, still on part, so it will not knit, but it does pre-select the needles. So now all my needles for row number 9 are selected and I can continue knitting the shoulder. I'm rehanging my edge weights. I'm resetting my row counter to row 144. And now I continue knitting the left shoulder, decreasing for the armhole on the left and decreasing for the neckline on the right. Up until row 224, when I start decreasing for the shoulder shaping. Still knitting in pattern, changing colors where needed. The carriage is threaded again, so I can continue knitting. And here is the knitting with the first shoulder. So this is the waist yarn and here comes the first shoulder. Next up is the right shoulder and I'm going to knit it exactly the same as the left, but mirrored. I'm going to rehang my knitting from the waist yarn on needle number 1 to 67. Okay, front of dispenser finished and it went great. I didn't make any mistakes, I counted correctly, I switched colors correctly, I decreased correctly, so it was just straight up knitting. But sometimes it also happens to me that I make mistakes or my knitting falls from the machine or I forget something, so that's why I played it safe. No shame in that. So now the front and the back of the dispenser are finished and I'm going to knit the ribbing for the neckband and for the armholes. And I'm going to knit a 1x1 rib, which is the same as I knit for the front and the back of the dispenser. So it's basically all the same, casting on, knitting the ribbing, and in this case I'm going to knit it off on waste yarn to attach it to the dispenser later. Now onto the ribbing. For the arms I need 61 centimeters. Which equals to 194 stitches and I'm gonna knit 10 rows in ribbing. And for the neckline I'm knitting a V-neck, so I've divided the back neck and the front parts. So I'm going to knit 82 stitches for 10 rows and I'm going to knit 82 and 60 together is 142 stitches and knit 10 rows. And that's all the same as I knitted the ribbing for the front of the dispenser and the back, so I'll go over it pretty quickly. Now, all the knitting behind the knitting machine is done. I have my front of the dispenser, I have the back of the dispenser, and I have all the ribbing for the armholes and the neckline. So now it's time to assemble the dispenser. And you can sew the dispenser together by hand. You can connect it together on the knitting machine. You can connect it on a linker. And for this project, I'm going to link my dispenser together on the linker. So how do I attach a dispenser? So this is my dispenser. I have the back of my dispenser and I have the front of my dispenser with the V-neck. And first I'm going to attach one shoulder. Then I'm going to attach the back and half of the front neckline in one go. Then I'm going to attach the second part of the front neckline. Next, attach the second shoulder. Then attach the ribbing for the armholes. And finally fold the knitting in half, so I have one half left, and then attach the sides. Final step, finish the V neckline and sew in all the ends. And here is my festive Fair Isle dispenser. It's finished. Perfect for the holidays, perfect for dinners with friends and family. I'm looking forward to the holiday season so I can wear this dispenser a lot. Now, I hope I have inspired you to knit something for yourself this holiday season. Knitting a dispenser is faster than knitting a sweater because you don't have to knit the sleeves. It's just sleeveless. So it's a project that's intermediate, maybe. All in all, I'm really happy with it. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like on the video, comment down below, subscribe to the channel. It all helps out the channel a lot. Thanks. I wish you happy knitting and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!